The forest always stood like a dark wall behind the village, its endless line of pines and oaks stretching farther than anyone dared to measure. In the daytime, it looked almost ordinary. Birds sang in the branches, the smell of resin filled the air, the wind quietly combed through the crowns. But at night, the forest changed. The silence thickened, becoming heavy, suffocating, as if someone spread an invisible blanket over the whole world. The trees seemed to bend closer to one another, and in the rustle of leaves, one could hear whispering voices. The elders called it simply the Black Forest. They never said this name loudly, as if the very sound might awaken something sleeping in those depths. They told stories older than the village itself, hunters who disappeared without a trace, children lured by mysterious voices, shadows that slid between the trunks without leaving tracks. The warning was always the same: never step beyond the tree line after dusk. But one evening, Olesia broke this rule. Her flashlight beam trembled, cutting through the dark thickets. The trees stood close, their roots rising from the ground like the backs of some huge animals. The knots in the bark resembled distorted faces, grinning and grimacing. At first, she heard only her own breath. But then, a whisper, so faint she thought it was just her imagination. Olesia. She froze. The flashlight twitched in her hands. Again, clearer this time. Olesia. Come closer. Her heart beat so loud she thought the forest would hear it. She spun around, but behind her there was nothing. Only darkness, only trees. The whisper grew stronger. It seemed to seep from every direction at once, from the roots, from the crowns, from the very air. Something moved in the distance. Not an animal, not a person. Something shapeless, a ripple of shadow. Every instinct screamed at her. Run! But her legs carried her deeper into the forest, as if invisible threads had pierced her skin and were pulling her straight to the heart of the Black Forest. The deeper Olesia went, the colder the air became. It felt as if the warmth was being pulled from her bones. Her breath turned into a white cloud in the trembling beam of the flashlight. The familiar path ended, replaced by slippery moss and stones. And then she saw it, a tree. It towered above the others, its trunk wider than a cottage. The bark was dark, almost black, as though it had been scorched by fire long ago. And in the trunk, an outline, a face, not carved by a human hand, not painted, grown. The eyes were closed, the mouth half open, as though the tree itself were breathing. And the whisper came from there. Olesia. You came back. Her legs nearly gave way. She stepped closer, though every fibre of her being screamed against it. The bark pulsed faintly, veins of resin glowing like dim amber under the surface. Then the eyes opened. They were black, bottomless. Cold pierced her body. Roots shifted beneath her feet, coiling around her ankles like snakes. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped. Her throat was choked by terror. The forest dragged her down. Olesia opened her eyes in her own bed. Morning sunlight spilled through the window. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream. But when she looked down at her legs, her heart froze. They were dirty, scratched. Moss clung to her skin. Dirt filled the folds behind her knees. Her parents ran in. Their faces were pale, their eyes red from a sleepless night. They told her she had been missing since yesterday evening. Searchers had combed the fields, the riverbanks, even the forest's edge. They found nothing. Olesia only nodded, unable to explain. She couldn't tell them the truth. But she knew. The forest had touched her. That night, when the house lay silent and everyone slept, she opened her eyes in the darkness, and she heard it again. Not outside. Inside her head. We are waiting. A week later, Artem disappeared. He had gone to gather firewood near the edge of the forest. He never returned. The only thing they found was his hat, caught in the roots. The villagers shook their heads and whispered, he was chosen. But Olesia knew better. He had not been chosen. He had been taken. And now she feared she would be next. At school, children whispered about the forest. Some said they saw shadows moving among the trees. Others swore that in the darkness, between the branches, eyes glowed faintly. That night, Olesia dreamed. Artem stood under the black tree. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. "Help me," he whispered. Then roots tore through his chest. She woke screaming, her throat raw. Olesia could no longer wait. If the forest was coming for her, she would go to it first. She took a lantern in one hand and a piece of chalk in the other. Her grandmother once said that words written with faith could push away darkness. The moment she stepped past the tree line, the whisper rose again, stronger, clearer. It led her back to the black tree. At its base, between twisted roots, gaped a hollow, a tunnel into the earth itself. Her lantern shook, but she stepped inside. The air was heavy, damp, suffocating. The flame flickered. Roots hung from the ceiling like veins. The walls glistened with sap, and in them bulged faces, dozens of them, mouths open in silent screams. Her stomach turned when she recognized one. Artem. His eyes opened. "Olesia," he whispered. Her lantern slipped from her hand. Darkness swallowed her whole. Voices filled the dark. Hundreds, thousands. They cried, they begged, they moaned. Then one rose above all the others, deep, ancient. "Daughter of the forest, you have entered. You are ours." "No!" she screamed, twisting, fighting against invisible bonds. Roots slithered over her arms and legs, binding her. "One of us is already inside you. The boy, his soul feeds us, and soon you will feed us too." Her chest heaved. She thrashed wildly, but the roots held her fast. Then, faintly, weakly, Artem's voice. "Don't listen." Olesia opened her eyes. She was lying on the grass at the forest's edge. The lantern was gone, her chalk crushed into dust. The village lights glimmered in the distance. Her whole body ached. She rolled up her sleeve and froze. On her arm, under the skin, black lines twisted. Thin, jagged spirals, like roots burrowing deep. The forest had marked her. Strange things began happening in the village. Livestock vanished. At night, trees seemed to creep closer to the houses. Children woke screaming, swearing they had heard someone calling their names from the windows. The elders gathered in the square. Their faces were grave. They spoke of the mother beneath, a hunger older than time, sleeping under the roots of the black forest. But Olesia already knew. It was not a curse. It was not an accident. It was hunger. And it was waking. One evening, Artem returned, or so it seemed. He appeared at the edge of the village, smiling. His clothes were ragged, his face pale, but alive. Parents rushed to him, sobbing with joy. But Olesia saw it immediately. His eyes. They were too dark, too empty. That night he came to her window. "Olesia, come with me. It's beautiful down there. You'll never be alone again." Her arm burned where the mark lay under her skin. She understood. This was not Artem. Desperate for answers, Olesia went to the village library. In the dust of the archives, she found an old journal, bound in cracked leather. It spoke of the mother beneath, an ancient feeder of souls. Only light and word could resist her. Symbols drawn in a certain order formed a prayer of banishment. That same night, the earth split open in the schoolyard. Roots burst forth, seizing another child and dragging them down screaming into the dark. Olesia ran to the square. With trembling hands, she drew the symbols across the asphalt in chalk. Her lantern burned brighter, flaring in defiance. Some of the symbols glowed, forcing the roots to recoil. Others smoldered black and faded. And then Artem stepped from the shadows. "You can't win," he said. His face shifted, sometimes human, sometimes hollow. Behind him, roots rose like a wall of hands. Olesia drew the final symbol with a cry. Light erupted. Artem screamed, his form flickering, tearing. But then the voice thundered in her skull, vast and merciless. You have not stopped us. You have only opened the door wider. The earth split wide. Thousands of eyes glared from the cracks. The village turned into a battlefield. Roots tore through the streets, smashing houses, splitting the ground. Lanterns flickered, screams filled the air. People fled, but the forest was already inside the village. Olesia stood in the square, her hands bleeding from the chalk that had cut into her skin. She drew symbol after symbol, her tears mixing with the dust. Each glowing mark held back the roots for only a moment. Children cried. Old men fell to their knees, praying. Mothers clutched infants, their eyes wide with terror. And above all of it, Artem's voice, mocking, echoing from every direction. You're part of us now, Olesia. You belong here. Her mark burned brighter, spreading across her arm, her chest, her neck. She screamed, not in pain, but in defiance. I am not yours. Light burst from her body. The chalk symbols ignited at once, blazing white. The roots shrieked, recoiling like wounded animals. Faces in the bark twisted, screaming silently as they crumbled into ash. The ground trembled. The black tree far in the forest shook violently, its hollow mouth gaping wide. And from deep below, a roar. The mother beneath was waking fully. When the first rays of sunlight touched the rooftops, silence fell. The roots withdrew. The cracks sealed. The whispers faded. The villagers emerged, broken, but alive. Many were gone, taken into the earth forever. Houses lay in ruins. Smoke rose from splintered beams. Olesia collapsed on the square, her body trembling. The mark on her arm smouldered faintly, but no longer spread. The elders lifted her gently, whispering prayers. She knew the truth. The forest had only retreated, not died. The mother beneath still stirred under the roots, and one day she would rise again. Years passed. The village rebuilt. Children played in the streets again. Fields were sown. The forest stood where it always had, silent and dark. But Olesia never forgot. At night, when the wind rustled the crowns of the trees, she pressed her hands to her ears, because sometimes, just sometimes, she still heard it. A whisper. Olesia. And in the distance, the black tree waited,